traveling teacher.
I'm here, I promise. I'm just getting everything for myself. I'm organized. I'm very selfish. I'm sorry. I'm nearly happy.
Once you focus and ready to go.
John, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Her life work with prisoners has been featured in the documentary films Chasing Buddha and Key to Freedom. Venerable Robina is known for her straightforward and energetic teaching style, helping people to discover the potential of their own minds with clear explanations about Tibetan
That's
Buddhism.
That's a polite word for being rude.
And how to apply it in their own lives, right? It's my honor to welcome Venerable Robina.
Okay, thank you. What's our topic for the day? What are we talking about?
Two wings.
Yeah, the two wings. But we end up talking about really whatever you want.
Okay. Hey, wait a minute. Where are the people on Zoom?
They're here.
But I have to see them.
Yeah. Put the Zoom people
but I have to see them.
Yes,
so can I have this computer?
Yeah. Yes, Hernan, can we no, you want it in front of her.
I want the computer right in front of me.
Computer.
Yeah. And you don't need me big in the gallery because they don't need to see me in the room.
Do you want this one, Hernan, or you want me to?
I'll put this one.
Okay, very good.
Just turn it around so I can see people. So I have, yeah, that's better. And now it's right close, coming close, coming all the way in close. Bring the camera in close, not just the distance. Bring it right up to my face. No, bring the camera right up to my face.
Huh?
Bring the camera.
Yes, it is.
It's not. Yeah, almost. Well, it's hard. It's sort of almost. And not because I'm pretty, because it helps seeing people. Put it here then. It's no good. Cushions in the way. Let me see. Okay, so now we can all see each other. Now I'm happy. Good. All right. You can't hear me. Now you can hear me. Does that interfere with the sound?
Yeah, there's a microphone here.
But it's sort of no good to have the other one. Okay, so unmute me then. Yeah. Where's it gone? Unmute me.
Hold on.
Go on. There we go. Can you hear me on Zoom? You can hear me? Yes? Good. Okay. Yes? Okay. I'm here. Hello? Have we met?
No.
We haven't met. I'm happy to meet you. It's echoing, so it's no good. So I have to do the muting one.
No, here it's already muted.
Already muted. Okay, good. Right off. But it's still echoing.
It goes for a few seconds and then it goes away.
All right. Okay.
Just the thing with iPads.
Okay, fine. Good. Right. Now we're settled. Okay. There's an advantage in knowing what you want, but it means you have to be impolite. So I was talking to a person yesterday who's, never mind. But can you hear me? You all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me on Zoom? Okay. I always figure if you can get what you want, nothing wrong with wanting it and trying, but if you can't, then you accept. When I go to the cafe and I tell them exactly what I want, when I used to go to Starbucks, I want 180 degrees, half and half, this one, that one, medium, coffee bean. If you can get it all, then great. But if you can't, then it doesn't matter. But sitting there kind of hoping you get what you want without asking is very silly. That's my philosophy. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to talk about how to develop the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. As the Solian says, compassion is not enough. As Lama Zopa says, meaning well is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. Why? So that we can take this advice as tools to develop these two parts of ourselves, put ourselves together, get clarity and wisdom, and the bonus is happiness for ourselves, which then enables us to see that others are all there in the same boat. So then we know how to help them. We're going to do that today and tomorrow. And then let's, taking the words of the Buddha to the lineage of our amazing Tibetan holy beings, right down to my own particular Lamas, Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe, His Holiness, their way of seeing the world through the Buddha. And the long-term goal is so that we can become this Buddha, wisdom and compassion, which is our natural potential for the sake of every mother sentient being. The long-term goal, long-term. And we can express those thoughts in our little prayer. Refuge prayer with bodhicitta. Going to have it on the screen. Who's the screen man? There we go. Look at this. Refuge and bodhicitta. Sangye Chodang. Sangye Chodang. One back. Where is it? Go back. I think it's back. Refuge. There it is. Stop. That's it. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Can you see the first two lines are expressing our reliance on the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, for those of us who figure we're already Buddhists, and the second two lines are this altruistic motivation. We're going to listen so we can take this as tools to develop our own marvelous potential so we can be a benefit to others, which is the meaning of the Buddha. May that be. Sangye charam toke chongnam la jansho baru jagni kyapsu chi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki jola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye charam toke chongnam la jansho baru jagni kyapsu chi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki jola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye charam toke chongnam la jansho baru jagni kyapsu chi Dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangi drupasho. So we are sometimes auspicious too. The center offers a mandala as a request for the teachings. Can you want to do that? Who's the Omade? Oh, you have? Good. This is really wonderful. So imagine you're offering to the Buddha as a request for the teaching. So we're going to offer the entire universe represented by this thing that looks like 9 pins, in the bowling alley. It's actually representing the universe. And then second, we're going to offer the representations of enlightened body, speech, and mind so that we can achieve those,
Page 100, right?
Shall I sing the prayer?
Yes, sure.
The one before, just the prayer before. Scroll down. Just before.
There we go.
That's it, the long, the short. Keep going, up, keep going. There you go, that one. That's it. Saji perki rugshing metog. Shramri rablingji ni de gen padi sangye shingdu mi te olwagi drokonam darjing la chepa shog. And then if you want to do the other one, you see requesting that one short. Now that's enough. We imagine Buddha happily receives this offering. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Done. Okay, good. All right. Okay. So I think in the world, our world especially, people become more spiritual because they love the idea of love and compassion, opening the heart, which is incredible. But as Holiness says, this is such a powerful point in Buddhism, compassion is the point, if you like, but it's not enough. And this is a surprising thing. So what does that mean, we think? What's not enough, And this approach in Buddhism is so specific. And when we understand this, we really get the point of the path, get the point of the lam rim, the gradual stages, So as we know, if we know the lam rim even a little bit, so it's, there's the first set of teachings, the second, and then the third, and they call those, we're putting Lama Zopa Rinpoche's words, there's a teaching at the beginning of the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability, as they put it. Sometimes they refer to it as the first scope. Rinpoche often says that's not enough. The second is the teachings and practices suitable for those of the middle capability, and that's the wisdom wing. And that means they're the teachings we share with the Hinayana path. They're the teachings you'd get if you're in Burma or Thailand. And those teachings, if you could stay there and completed that section of the path, that would eventually lead you to achieving your own liberation from suffering and its causes, which is exactly the Four Noble Truths, which is that's the wisdom wing itself. You'd achieve your own nirvana and then you're out of here, baby. That's that. And then the teachings and practices we share with the Hinayana path. Exactly the same. And that's the wisdom wing, if you like. We'll explain why it's called wisdom. But then you've got the other wing, the compassion wing, which is the component of the Mahayana path, which is the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the greatest capability, or if you like, the great scope, That's the entire path. And the final stage, so I like to call them junior school, high school, university. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of comfortable because we get that concept. When we even hear low scope, middle scope, it's a quaint concept. We don't put our head around it. But as soon as we say junior school, high school, whatever you want to call it, and then university, we get it, But the final one, part of the compassion wing, that's postgraduate and that's tantra. then it really makes sense that it's a gradual, incremental, step-by-step stages of a path. But the path, of course, is internal, you know, psychological. So the goal, the cause of these stages, the cause of Buddhahood, very precisely the cause, is this thing called bodhicitta, which is the culmination of incredible love and compassion. All the stages of starting with equanimity that culminate in great compassion, that then completely culminate in bodhicitta. It's not equivalent to compassion, it's the result of compassion. It's this outrageous paradigm shift in the mind, such when you've got it, that causes you to only have other, you've done this radical shift, exchange self for others. You've replaced the main voice in the head of I to be other. It's an outrageous level of practice, outrageous, almost in our culture, a bit weird. I mean, to think there'd be no thought of I in our culture is a bit strange. You'd be mentally ill, you know. But here, this is the view that's so radical. When you finally got that goal, you've achieved the first stages of your bodhicitta. From the first moment, you've accomplished it seriously, not just moments of it, not just flashes of it. Then you've made this shift in your mind that now only the two main components of bodhicitta. One is you only now think of others, meaning that there in your mind is it's effortless. It's effortless. Others are there in your mind instead of I. But second, the long-term goal of the bodhisattva is to never give up, perfecting that bodhicitta and combining it with wisdom, realization of emptiness, perfecting those two, which are expressed as the six perfections. That's the long-term, to end up becoming a Buddha. That's the long-term goal, the two wings of the bird. The wisdom wing, the Hinayana component, and then the Mahayana component together. That's the path to Buddhahood. So why is it compassion's not enough? What does it mean? Why can't we just leap to compassion and bodhicitta? It's an impossibility. Let's look at why. When we understand this, it really kind of makes sense, you know?
Oh,
So the way to look into it is
compassion.
compassion. We have to define what compassion. What is compassion?
I know. How are you feeling today? Oh,
Can you please, who is that down there? Can you please mute yourself, Kimberly?
in pain?
Or whoever is down there. Can you mute yourself, sweetie pie? Yes, Kimberly. Thank you, darling. I think she's in hospital, so a nurse is probably chatting to help her. Hello, Kimberly. Okay, thank you. So, okay, let's look at this one. This is the point. It makes sense. So we say compassion. We have to define what Buddha means by it. So I know in modern psychology, they kind of conflate, they make a separate meaning of empathy and compassion. In Buddhism, it's the same, you know. Compassion and all of these thoughts, we're going to go into this, all of these states of mind, whether the neurotic ones, attachment and aversion and jealousy and depression, or whether it's compassion, love, and blah, blah, they're all coming down to, they're all rooted in being, we're going to go into this, conceptual thoughts. So the definition of compassion, as it's at the beginning of it, is a conceptual thought that only wants others not to suffer. If you have compassion, you're seeing the suffering and you wish they didn't have it. Okay. Now, obviously here, that's compassion, but then we have to define the word suffering, and this is the key. This is the key. What's suffering? Well, now we've got to go back to the wisdom wing in the Four Noble Truths, where Buddha states this very clearly. Right there, we've got to go back to the wisdom wing to get our definitions sorted out. So here, first noble truth. This is the Four Noble Truths is what is taught. This is the wisdom wing. Lord Buddha's first teaching. The first one is there is suffering. The second is there are causes. The third is, guess what? You can be free of suffering and its causes. And fourth is the methodology, how to do it, you know? That's it. That's Buddha's path. The wisdom wing. No discussion of compassion there. This is the wisdom wing. How you can get out of suffering, how you can quit suffering. The wisdom wing, the Hinayana component, the teachings we share with the Hinayana path. Now, this is the point now, suffering. The Buddha asserts three levels, and this is the difference. This is the radical difference. There are three levels of suffering. Now, if we don't, in our world, we only have the first one. That's it. Suffering, basically, simply speaking, is when the bad things happen. We get that totally. No one needs to teach you that. If you stub your toe, you know, you learn it's called suffering. You're getting what you don't want. That's suffering. And so whether it's torture, war zones, losing entire communities of people in houses in Los Angeles, Whatever it might be, we all know that's called suffering, all the way from stubbing the toe to the worst. That's labeled suffering. We know it, and it's when the bad things happen. And it's absolutely what we do not want. The universe is like this, from the mice to the monkeys to who knows what, you know. So that's all. Trouble is that's all we think of as suffering. So when we think of compassion, the first group we think of, the only group we think of, is usually it's like the innocent victims. Being very blunt, the innocent victim. You've got to be an innocent victim to deserve our compassion. If we discover that you punch somebody in the nose and they punch you back, you're not going to have compassion for the first person. They deserve it, we'll say, isn't it? So the only people we are prepared to have compassion for are the innocent victims, and that probably comes down to a few children and a few animals. I'm sorry to be sarcastic. But look at us, you know. We want to, you've got to deserve compassion. It's a very heavy duty concept we have. You've got to deserve my compassion. And that means you must be innocent. So it's a very interesting deal. We mightn't say it like that, but that's what it comes down to. So in other words, we have very, very, very limited compassion. It's a bit shocking to hear this, but we do, you know. It's only for that group. But the Buddha's saying, when we hear him say, well, guess what, folks? Everyone's suffering. We go, what are you talking about? The person who didn't have a burned house in Los Angeles, the people who are beautiful and young and healthy with happy bodies and happy husbands and happy children, lovely houses and money in the bank. What do you mean they're suffering? It doesn't make any sense to us. That's why we have to go back to the wisdom wing. We have to go back to the wisdom wing to see what the Earth Buddha means by suffering. We have to, otherwise it's not the complete path, you know, it's just our own view of compassion. Very limited. So the first kind of suffering is called the suffering of suffering, when the bad things happen. Now, the shocking part about the second one, Buddha simply calls it the suffering of change. But speaking simply, this is when the good things happen. That's what we call happiness. And Buddha's calling it suffering. This is too much for our poor minds, you know. So we have to analyze what he means by this. Otherwise, it's just la-di-da, ridiculous. But virtually, what we mean by happiness, which is when the good things happen, that's what he refers to as a more subtle, more nuanced, more profound level of suffering. So we better understand what he means. And this is where the big misunderstandings come. As soon as we hear this, we hear that we've got to, you know, you're not allowed to be happy and you can't have nice things. You've got to be miserable the whole time. It's really all suffering. Samsara is suffering, we say. We don't know what he means. We be technical about it. Be precise. It's heavy duty, you know. The third one is so abstract we can't even hear it. It's called all-pervasive suffering. I don't even know what he means by that. You understand? What's interesting, incidentally, is we take this path, first scope, second scope, third scope, you know, junior school, high school, university. The first kind of suffering, the methodology to stop it is the first and second scopes. Sorry, the first scope, junior school, entry level, grade 1, and that's the method to stop the first kind of suffering. The second kind of suffering, which is actually what's called happiness, which is a more nuanced level of suffering, how to stop that is by doing the second scope. And, you know, the first one is called stop harming others. We're going to go into this. The first one, the methodology to stop your own suffering is stop harming others. The second one, to stop the subtle kind of suffering, which is your, you know, the one we call happiness, but he calls the suffering of change. The second scope, you give up attachment. Third one, you stop the pervasive suffering by realizing emptiness. The whole path is laid out very clear, you see.
Realizing what?
Realizing emptiness, realizing the ultimate wisdom of seeing that everything has no inherent nature. That's what eliminates the so in other words, another way of putting it, the big picture point of view, the big picture, all the realms of existence that we know about, to stop the lower realm suffering and all the bad things happening, you stop harming others because they're the cause of suffering. Second, to stop even the upper realms, not to mention the lovely things happening, which are rooted in attachment, based on attachment. You've got to give up attachment to stop that. Third, to stop being reborn altogether in ridiculous samsara, you've got to realize emptiness. This is the approach. Okay, so let's go into these details, all right? So why, let's go to the middle scope. Why is what we call happiness a more subtle, more nuanced, more pervasive, deeper level of suffering? Because it sounds, on the face of it, it sounds really cruel, you know, unfair, unkind. So in order to understand this, we have to understand the second noble truth. There are causes of suffering. There are causes. And this is really the whole substance of the first level of practice, the first and second scopes, the wisdom wing, and the method, the kind of the nuts and bolts of Lord Buddha's explanation of what samsara is, what is a sentient being, what is happiness, what is suffering, and what is its causes. It's the nuts and bolts, and that's the wisdom wing. And we don't have this clear. Compassion has no basis. It's fragile, it's based on attachment, it's sentimental, and it doesn't last. It's useless. It's better than nothing. But it's it's not rooted in anything, it's not grounded in anything. It's just sentimental stuff based on attachment, and it changes, fitting from pillar to post. Better than nothing, but it won't get us far, Okay. What are the causes of suffering? Well, the broader view here is to understand what Buddha means by who suffers. Well, who suffers is a sentient being. Trees, maybe we think trees suffer, but trees don't have a mind. Buddha would say they don't have a mind. They're living things, but they're not mind possessors, Buddha would say. But so the mind possessors, Sem Chen in Tibetan, it's a lovely translation, better than sentient being, I think. Mind possessor. Buddha would say there are trillions of mind possessors, trillions of sentient beings, not just humans. It's only 7 billion, even not just the animals. That's a tiny percentage as well. Although probably in one summer in your backyard, you'll have 7 billion mosquitoes. I don't know if you have mosquitoes in Miami, but in Florida, we just, anyway, whatever. So we also know Buddha's got this other view, broader view, which comes from these ingenious Hindus who began to see reality. This is before the Buddha, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, with these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago, who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. And Lord Buddha went through that amazing system, agreeing with all they already recognized the gross level of suffering and how to stop it. They already recognized the subtle level of suffering and how to stop it. The second kind, not the third one, though. They still in samsara, he said. That's where he diverged in his own direction, specifically in relation to his own direct experiential findings about the nature of self. That's where Buddha diverged. So the third kind of suffering, he says, that's what he has discovered. He said that. He says that, the realization of emptiness. So from this perspective, then, the causes of suffering, the first kind of suffering, and so let's forget the realms of existence. Let's just look at our own human lives. From Buddha's perspective, from the point of view of the big picture, we've got a human body, which is actually a good one in comparison. It's not the suffering of suffering. That will be animals, spirits, hell beings. We've got a human body, which is the fruit of virtue. But in the rest of our lives, the other 3 ways that our karma ripens, our mental tendencies, we've all got negative ones. Look at us. Sometimes people have the tendency to kill, steal, lie, get depressed, angry, harm others. We can see that. As well as kindness and virtue and goodness, we've got a bit of those. Then you've got the second kind of karma, the way it ripens in our lives. We can see this is how we're seen and treated by others. So the result of negative karma is you're seen as miserable, people harm you, you get hurt, you're suffering. And the third kind is called environmental karma. We'll go into these. So these are, if we look at these in terms of suffering, we all know we've all got them. We've got the negative tendencies. We've got the bad things that happen to us. People are mean to us. People are unkind to us. Bad things happen. The bank doesn't give you a loan. Your house burns down. Hubby leaves you. Well, you might rejoice at that one. I know. I say more these days. When I used to lead all these pilgrimages, to India and Nepal, and also treks up to Laudo, always among the 20, 30 people, 70% were female and mostly older who chucked out their hubbies or whose hubbies had died. I'm not being rude about hubbies, but they were kind of like liberated, these women. But I rarely have ever, or you go to see these women who go out at for coffee in the morning at 10 o'clock and they're all chatting to their girlfriends. But I've never seen a group of men, heterosexual men, all with their boyfriends chatting away at coffee at 10 in the morning. You don't just do it, you men, do you? You don't do it, men, do you? You go find another wife. That's what you do. I mean, it's very fascinating. All these women on the trips, I couldn't believe it. Some of them, I mean, I'm not being mean about people, men or women. I've been both in all my lives. Don't worry about it. But I mean, it's very fascinating, isn't it? You've got to admit. Anyway, never mind. It's just a side comment. Where were we?
But well said.
Okay, so listen. Okay, so what we're getting at is what are the causes of suffering? Well, it's in a sense, extremely simple. The concepts are fairly simple, just very shocking to us, because it's not our view, that's all. So the Buddha says each trillion of sentient beings, you're going to put them into 3 categories, Oh, no, simple. Some are suffering and some are not. To whatever degree, some have got a lot of suffering, some have got less suffering. And there are some who are out of samsara who have quit suffering. There's these stages, So we even just look at the first kind of suffering, What are the causes of that? Why do you get harmed? Why do people steal from you? Why does no one believe your words? Why are you unhealthy? Why did you get COVID? You know, why did your house burn down in Los Angeles, not somebody else's? This is what we mean by suffering. And this is what agonizes, I think, if we're in our culture. Now, if we're Christian or Muslim and you have faith in a creator, you don't know why and you don't care, but you trust God. He's got a plan. He keeps his plan in his pocket and he's allowed to because he's the boss. I'm not being sarcastic. If you have faith in a creator, you'll lead a very good life. You'll accept whatever God says. I think that's pretty profound, I tell you. You don't rant and rave, you know. Blame God. I know Lama Yeshe in the early 80s, he visited Geshe Jumpa Gyatso, his close friend, in Italy, who was at Lama's center there teaching the Geshe program. He called it then was called whatever it was called then, the master's program. And Lama was visiting him in the hospital, and he was shocked by when the Italian boys translated what all the men in the ward were saying about God. When I was a Catholic, we never dared say one word about God. But these Italians, God's a pig, they'd say. Lama was so profoundly shocked, he could not believe that people were blaming their creator. Of course, Our Lady's even worse. Mother of God, she's a whore, isn't she? You know. And then one Argentinian I met, he said, we're even worse than the Italians. I don't know if that's true. You Cynthia, is it God? You have rude words for God? What are some of the rude words for God? Tell us. You don't know. You're probably too holy.
I don't know. That doesn't come to my mind, but
Well, this Argentinian said that we're worse than the Italians, he said. Maybe they are the Italians after the Second World War who brought it to Argentina. I think so, probably. All the Nazis. Anyway, so then we always. Okay, where am I? I've got to keep control here. So what are the causes of suffering, people? Why do bad things happen to us? And I think this is a tremendously powerful view, because you look in our world. If we're Christian and Muslim, we're okay if we practice properly. You know, you can't second guess God. But if you're a materialist, with great respect to us, I'm not trying to sound like a fundamentalist, but if you really do believe, I mean, strongly believe that your mother and father created you, and the materialist model says that, I'm sorry, you only have a brain, you have a body, you have the genes, you have the physical, you only have physical, there's no other component of you, and that we know that comes from mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, and goes back to the monkeys. That's the view that we hold in our culture, which we never question. But if we follow it through logically, please, logically, what are the implications of that? Well, that means your mother and father, if they created you, they gave you suffering. They gave you the good things too, but they gave you suffering. Now, that's a very shocking concept. And I think that's what we feel. We say, when bad things happen, we say, you know, how dare that happen to me? I don't deserve it. And you're right. If your mother and father are the blame, you are absolutely right that you don't deserve it. But we don't question, we don't analyze this. It's correct. And that's how we feel. We say, I didn't ask to get born. We say it and we mean it. Now, I always sound hilarious, I know, but you listen to this. If that view is truth, then you have absolute right to blame your mother and father and sue them to the hilt. I'm not being sarcastic, but you go to your damn therapist and tell you've got to forgive your mother and father. I don't know why. Are you sort of seeing what I'm saying? We don't follow, we're so wishy-washy. We don't follow through. On the one hand, we feel it's not our fault, but on the other hand, then we feel guilty about that. But if your mother and father made you, it isn't your fault. You're absolutely right. You didn't ask to get born. And I find that philosophy, I think, the worst I've ever heard. It's the most nihilistic, hideous, depressing view I've ever heard. That two people can have sex and pop out of their womb some wacko. I mean, it's just not fair. I mean, do you hear my point? Yeah. But we all say, oh, yeah, mummy made us, daddy made us, but the brain, blah, you know. The Buddha's got a third view. They give you a body, of course they do. How kind they are. But guess what? You bring your own mind with you. Because Buddha's view about the mind, it isn't physical. First point, if we can prove that Buddha is wrong in his assessment, if we can prove that he is wrong in his assessment, and remember this, it's not just revelation. I remember the scientist, I always quote this, in the scientist of New Zealand years ago. He said, it was such a powerful question, I've never had it before or since. He said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Which is the perfect question if you assume religious philosophy, which assumes a creator, is correct. We know if you have faith in a creator, he created the universe, he created the laws, he is the boss, and he punishes and he rewards, broadly speaking. We know that. So we assume you can't know, you can't prove that God is right, because if you can prove that God is right, that means you become God, and you can't say that. You can't say that. It's not possible. It's the worst sin possible. So naturally, he assumed this is religious philosophy, where who revealed this lot to him? We know who revealed to Jesus was God. The Muslims, I suppose it was Mr. What was his name? Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad, wasn't it? Jews was probably Mr. Abraham or somebody on the mountain when the 10 things came down. I don't know, all those views. Do you get my point? It's always God, the boss up the top, who made everything, who is the boss. I'm not criticizing. If you have faith in God, I mean, I loved God when I was a kid. I was in love with God, But I never saw him as my creator. I think I was always a Buddhist. Anyway, the Buddha's view is, in this level, completely different. It takes a while to hear it. It sounds the same. So I said, because Buddha is not a creator, he doesn't assert a creator. In fact, he says we don't need creating. We do fine creating our own mess, and we can create our own happiness. We're the boss. And that's a massive difference. So this scientist, I said to him when he said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? I said, well, would you ask Einstein? Who revealed the teachings about relativity to him? And of course, we all laughed because, of course, we wouldn't. Because we know Einstein's a clever fellow who used his mind, his intelligence, to observe what was in front of him, natural law. And he came up with these findings. He articulated them. He codified as laws, and he articulated. And he says, here is what I've found to be true. Here is what I've found to be true. Here is my methodology. And if you want to find the same thing, over to you, baby. Simple. That's Buddha. And I'm just not being sarcastic. It is exactly the same. The difference, of course, is Buddha's view of the mind coming from these Hindus is far more subtle than we think of in neuroscience. We don't even posit anything like the Buddha's view of the mind in neuroscience or psychology. We say it's the brain. That's it. It's physical. For the Buddha, consciousness is not physical. It goes to, and these genius Indians with their single point of concentration technique discovered subtle levels of mind that we don't even posit as existing in our culture. Much more subtle, more profound, more amazing levels of mind you can't even imagine. Lama Yeshe, in his book Mahamudra, he spends all his time trying to encourage us people, because we're also depressed and self-piteous. He called ego self-pity me, the self-pity me. And in Mahamudra, he points out even just some of the qualities that you would have having accomplished even some level of concentration using this technique these genius Indians invented 3,000 years ago. It would blow our minds if we realize how powerful our mind is. Lama says, when you've even got some level of concentration, forget emptiness, forget Buddhahood. Your mind is so blissful you can't. He used the word rapture, ecstasy. He used those words. I don't know how he found those words. Lama was just ingenious. I always joked that Lama was really a hippie, but looked like a Tibetan, He kind of cheated us. But he talked exactly like we did. And when you realize how medieval they typically talk, Lama was revolutionary, I tell you. It was extraordinary, So he describes how the level, he said, when your mind is in some concentration, your mind is so vast, it's as if it fills the universe, and as if you can count every atom in the universe. In other words, the clarity, we have nothing even remotely like it in our modern world, And it's only really now that we Western thinkers and, because there's holiness and these amazing talks with best brains in our culture, now discovering the ingenious knowledge of these incredible Indians, even before the Buddha, it's astonishing and remarkable. But what do we know about India, isn't it? We white people, so rude, isn't it? What do we know about Africa, India, Asia, China? Nothing, only now, a bit of humility coming, learning about these genius Indians, these incredible Indians, The Buddha came out of that system. Anyway, the mind is so astonishing for the Buddha. It's got this it's not physical. It's got much subtle levels of cognition that in the long term we must access. And then and this is about karma, the law of karma, which for the Buddha is a natural law that runs the universe, such that everything any being thinks or says or does every millisecond is the very process that produces the person you become. So we literally make ourselves second by second, life by life. We are the main player. There's no concept in Buddhism that the outside world plays the main role. If you're a Christian, God plays the main role. If you're a materialist, the outside world, mother, father, boyfriend, the weather, everything out there is the main cause of your happiness and suffering. This is demented for the Buddha. Our mind. is the main cause. Our mind is what causes happiness. Our mind is what causes suffering. This is his radical point, you know. It takes time for us to hear this. So, given this, what is the cause of suffering? And why do I want to know? Because I know I don't want to be punched in the nose and killed and lied to and stolen from. That's a given. I don't want suffering. So how do I stop it for the future? Like you look in your garden, I don't want those weeds. What causes them? I better know what causes them. If you have a problem, you first have to articulate the problem. First noble truth. There are weeds. Second, you don't want them. You got to know you don't want them. So you better know the causes. So you stop doing it. It's pretty obvious. Same here. So, as far as Buddha is concerned, everything that exists, including the mind, is impermanent. Is the product of the law, a natural law, not run by anybody, not made by anybody. You know, called cause and effect. The mind is a process of every millisecond. Whatever we think and do and say is the result of previous causes in the mind, and everything we think and do and say is the cause of what happens in the future. This is the fundamental principle of karma, you know. And we get this. You know very well when you practice music, you are the main cause of a good musician. You can't blame the piano. Oh, it's not my fault I'm good at music. It's Mr. Bach's music. It's Mr. Steinway's piano. That'd be ridiculous. You take responsibility. I'm the cause of it. And if you're a lousy piano player, you can't blame the piano as well. You blame yourself, your mind. We're the boss. Buddha says we're the boss. This is a tremendously different view. So, if Buddha then, what he's saying isn't coming from revelation, where's it coming from? His own experience, just like Einstein. This is the part that takes us time to hear. We just can't believe this is true, you know? Oh, you can't prove reincarnation, we say. Of course you can. Where did it come from? He didn't make it up. It's once you've accessed a more subtle level of mind, which it's nature and it's natural if it's more subtle. Its capacity for cognition is more subtle. So the subtle mind, when it's got clairvoyance, which comes naturally from getting samadhi, you can see the past, you can see the future, you see the minds of others, and this progresses and grows as you develop wisdom. This is the point in Buddhism, you know. It's extraordinary knowledge coming from these Indians. So the main causes of suffering, Buddha says, are two. You can narrow it, there are hundreds of causes, like all things, but you can narrow it down to the main causes. And they're both inside here, which of course is a big shock for us. But also it's the same with happiness. The two main causes of why good things happen, the two main causes of why I'm happy, both inside here. Karma, past actions that program your mind. Everything you think and do and say sow seeds in your mind. They don't just go astray. They stay in the mind and they program your mind. So the first one is the past actions you've done. And the second one is the delusions or the virtues that drove that action. So the actions that are labeled negative, which are those that are driven, an action of body and speech, driven by a neurotic state of mind, that sows seeds in the mind that can only ripen as suffering in four ways: type of rebirth, tendency, experience, environment. We'll go into this. If it's a virtuous action by definition is one that's, you know, an action that benefits others, driven by a virtuous state of mind, such as love and compassion and kindness. And that drops seeds in the mind that what can only ripen as happiness in the future: happy rebirth, good tendencies, happy experiences, and happy environment. It's very logical, but it's not complicated. It's just that it's different from our view. So we have to squeeze our brains, as Lama says, get it, you know. So these are the causes of suffering, and the cause of happiness is implied. We have to remember that because we only think of the suffering part. I've never heard yet a person ever ask me, why do good things happen, Robina? We don't care why, just give me more, please, you know. So the two main causes of suffering are in me. Therefore, I've got control over them. Therefore, I can change them. If it's somebody else, like God or my mother, I can stamp and shout and yell and blame and scream, but if they don't change, I'm stuck, aren't I? Here, you're the boss, you know. So this principle of karma, and many Buddhists have no interest in karma. They say it's pretty irrelevant. Who cares, you know? That's fine. But I would say if we don't really apply the law of karma, which is the very first level in the first scope, junior school, you know, you're not really being a Buddhist, because the whole view of karma is absolutely fundamental to Buddha's entire view of the universe and of how we can get enlightened. And if we can prove that Buddha's wrong in terms of the mind being not physical, and if we can prove that Buddha's wrong in asserting this law called karma, which he has observed, he come from the sky, he didn't have a vision, he didn't have a dream, he's not speculating, he's observed it to be true. If we can prove scientifically that they are wrong, then the whole of Buddhism would collapse into a heap of incoherent nonsense. These are fundamental, and these are right at the beginning of the practice. Junior school, entry level. So what it implies is you're sick of suffering. You've got to be sick of suffering. You've got to take on as your working hypothesis that these are the causes. So the very first level of practice is then you control your body and speech. The real one is you control your mind, but that comes in the second scope. Here, you control the servants of your mind. And in other words, you behave nicely. Do what your grandma says. The good communists, good Christians, good Muslims all agree, behave nicely. That's the first level of practice in Buddhism. But there's a fundamental difference. These are things that are so important to understand. We've got to unpack these ideas, you know. It sounds like Christianity. It sounds like your grandmother. It sounds like the usual thing, the police saying, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. And we hear it and we go, oh my God, I'm a naughty girl. Because we assume it means punishment. That's the view. That's the dualistic view. And that is with respect, the dualistic view that the Buddha would suggest is implied by believing there is a creator, a boss out there running the show. And indeed, a boss in here running the show, a self. It's a dualistic view. He says it's not true. We don't need punishing. We don't need rewarding. We do it ourselves. So this is a huge thing. And so I always quote this as well. I had this Jesuit priest friend years ago, and I asked him, I said, by definition, what is a sin? What makes, in other words, why is killing wrong? We all just go, oh, well, it just seems a good thing to do. Shouldn't kill. No, be more precise, please. So Jesus says, don't kill. You should ask him, thank you, Jesus, why not? And he should give a logical reason. And his reason is, and this is the part that's shocking, not shocking, but if you're a Christian, it's wonderful. It's because God said. So a sin by definition as a Muslim and a Christian, and again, I'm not criticizing, but this is necessary to understand, is, as they say, it's doing an action that goes against the will of God. This is pretty intense, you know. But that's what makes it wrong. The priest said there is some aspect of natural law insofar as people don't like getting killed. Guess what, you know? But the main factor that determines it as negative, as a sin, is because God said. This is pretty tremendous, I think, and this is very powerful. So if you are devoted to God, you want to do his wishes. So for this reason, you will not kill, and you will not lie, and you will not steal. This is perfect logic. That's what we assume Buddha means, because we assume it means the same thing. We don't question it. Completely nothing to do with Buddha. He's not a boss. He's not a creator. That's like thinking you go to your doctor and she says, don't smoke, Robina. You should ask her why not. And she won't say, because I say so. And if you do, I'll give you cancer. Of course not. You don't shake and shiver in your shoes and then go home and you see, oh, there's no doctor. Out come your Marlboros. I won't get cancer. She's not seeing me. That's how we are. We all, you know, if no one sees us do something naughty, oh, I got away with it, we think. This is the consequence of a dualistic view of having of punishment and reward, which is ego, you know. And even if you're a communist or a materialist, you have the same view. Mummy says, don't do this. Daddy says, don't do that. You know, the judge says, don't do this. The police say, don't do this. Oh, I've got to be a good girl. I get punished. And if no one sees me, I get away with it. It's very infantile. But the view of karma, my Catholic mother would say, virtue has its own rewards. That's what Buddha's saying, you know. It's very powerful. You become accountable. You are the boss. You punish yourself. You harm yourself by what you do, and you bring happiness to yourself. It's a tremendously powerful concept, you know. We've got to really think it through like this, unpack it. So within that law, Buddha says he's observed that bad things happen to us. Forget lower realms, just even in this life, bad negative tendencies, bad things happening to us, and environment harming us. These are the fruit of doing negative actions in the past. And if you have good tendencies, nice things happen to you, and the environment is delicious for you, it's because you've done virtuous things in the past. Forget Buddhahood, forget bodhicitta, forget emptiness. Just having nice things happen. This is the fruit of our past actions. But what do we think? Oh, it's good luck. You know, it's fine if you thank God. That's good. Nothing wrong. You'll have faith in God. You'll do his wishes. You'll be okay. There's another view, you know, when bad things happen is when we have the panic attack. And the first instinct, we all know this, no one has to teach you this. As soon as a bad thing happens, a child bursts into tears and scream and yell, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. This is the view of ego. Ego is programmed with this instinct of being an innocent victim who didn't ask to get born, whose fault it is not. Isn't it? The Buddha is articulating that philosophy. And it says it's the view of ego grasping, the root delusion. So then he presents his view of the mind to us, which is in the middle scope. So he says the mind. Okay, let me just sit for a second. Okay, so before we get to the second stroke, the first one. So given this view, even at the beginning, not too much analysis about the mind yet at the beginning, he just says, given that you don't want suffering in the future and you're taking as your working hypothesis a view that you create it and you don't want it, so you stop creating the causes of it. It's pretty obvious. You know you've got cancer, you know the cause is cigarettes, then conclusion is stop smoking cigarettes. Hardly surprising. You don't want to be killed, well, stop killing. You don't want to be lied to, so stop lying. You don't want to be not believed, so stop lying. You don't want to be poor, so stop being mean. Stop stealing. It's sort of, as a system, it's fairly simple. We've got to take it as a hypothesis first. We're not clairvoyant. So the first level is all about don't kill. You know, Buddha's got 7 little don'ts, like 10 don'ts, just like Jesus. Quite different. First 3 are don't kill, don't jump on the wrong partner if you're committed to somebody, and don't take the ungiven. 3. First one, body, action of body. Next 4, speech. Don't lie. Don't say words that aren't true. Don't kind of abuse people in their face with your wrong speech. Don't rabbit on about nothing. And don't badmouth behind backs. There's 4. Ones we all know these. We mightn't rape and kill too many people, but look at us with our speech, you know. Each of those actions brings their own consequences. And because they're actions that are actions done by our behavior that harm others, driven by a delusion, driven by anger, driven by attachment, these two fundamentally, then that is what makes them sow negative seeds in the mind that ripen. It's a very integrated internal system. It doesn't need judging and rewarding. The natural law, like cancer and cancer and cigarettes, it's a natural law. You have to keep hearing that. We mightn't see it first. It's a natural law. It doesn't need a boss. Botany doesn't need a Mr. Botany running the show, and then when Mr. Botany goes to sleep, the garden stops growing. No, it's a natural law. It'll just do its own trip. Same with karma. The mind is happening every second, and every second it's doing something. Every second it's programming itself. Every second it's dropping seeds in the mind, which will produce future results. I know when I first heard karma when I first heard the Lama Zopa, the Lamrim course. I don't know what word he was saying. I had no idea for a whole month, but I went, I heard the words, but it was too abstract, too arcane. But I used to say, what's the word karma? I remember asking Vita Giuliano, what does karma mean? He said, cause and effect. All I know is I loved the idea. I liked it. I knew something was already missing in my life, And Lama would come along. I don't know what Lama's ever meant, but Lama would come along and make me feel better. I think, God, it makes sense, what he'd say. Karma, I knew for me, I found that was what was missing in my life. I loved it. Because it says that I'm the boss, and that I like. So our suffering is the result of the past action. Not punishment. There's no punishment. There's no reward in Buddhism. Please hear it. And then happiness, good tendencies, people being nice to you, and the environment teaching you nicely. That's the fruit of your virtue. It's not complicated. It's just different. That's all, Given that I don't want future suffering, I'm going to watch myself like a hawk, and I will not. Of course, I won't kill, and of course, I won't steal, and of course, I won't lie. Of course not. For my own benefit, I'm the beneficiary. And this is the part I think very in our culture, because we're into guilt and shame and bad. We hear these instructions, and then we're too afraid to hear that the Buddha is talking to us. The wisdom wing is not discussing compassion. There's no discussion of compassion in the wisdom wing. It's not compassion yet. It's compassion for you. We should, oh no, I can't. That's too selfish, we'll say. We don't hear it properly. We all assume I shouldn't kill because it hurts others. Not yet. This is the Buddha's point. Okay, Jesus says killing is wrong because God said. Buddha says killing is wrong, honey child. Have you noticed people don't like getting killed? It's a natural law. There's only natural law when it comes to this. Only natural law. It is not Buddha's law. That's a joke. It's like saying cancer is a doctor's law. Rubbish. It's a natural law. This is a really huge point to think about. Buddha had observed that killing, stealing, lying produces future results. Okay, it's a subtle process. You can learn it eventually. This is the hypothesis right here. So Jesus says don't kill because God said. Buddha says don't kill because you're sweetie pie. Have you noticed people don't like getting killed? So that's how he defines it as wrong. It harms others. But listen to this point. Why, at the level of junior school and throughout our path, does he exhort us not to do it? This is the crucial point we miss in our culture. We assume he says don't do it because it harms others. No! The first step is don't do it, Robina, because it'll harm you, precious. That's what renunciation means. You've got to know you are sick of suffering. You can't just go, oh, I don't want to kill because it harms others. Oh, I can't have compassion for myself. No, no, no. We miss this in our culture, I tell you. Until we get this, we don't have renunciation. What do you think renunciation means? You are sick of suffering and you know the causes and you do not want to create more suffering. You are fed up with it. We understand this when it comes to nutrition. We are geniuses at reading all the nutrition things on packages, you know. And if you have a tendency to get diabetes, you're not going to touch the best sugar on the planet because you know you don't want diabetes. That's the same here. No one criticizes you for being selfish if you don't want to eat sugar. We all think it's selfish, not wanting to kill for your own sake. But that's the teaching. But we just can't hear it, you know. I think I've said a lot already. I've just begun. There's a clock. Okay, good. 12, 11, 12. Okay, now I think it's good you ask me some questions. A summary here, what I'm getting at is the beginnings of the wisdom wing. In order to understand what compassion is, which is for people who suffer, and here we're looking at what suffering is, and there are 3 levels. But at the moment, we're back to the wisdom wing, and we're looking at the first kind of suffering, and this is how you apply it. When I know the causes of my suffering are killing and stealing and lying, then this is the point now, right now, now I look at the people who are killing and stealing and lying. I will not just have compassion for the victims, I will have compassion for the stealer and the killer and the liar, because I know they're harming themselves. That's the radical difference. That's the huge point that comes as a result of understanding the 4 Noble Truths. Without that, you have no way in the world. Why would I have compassion for a pedophile? It's demented, isn't it? This is the reason. So until you know the causes of your suffering, you will never have compassion for those who are causing suffering. Do you understand me? This is pretty powerful. But now ask me some questions. Any questions, if you have any? No questions? They've all disappeared on the screen. You've all gone away. Am I making you nervous? Am I? I'm sorry. They're all disappeared. Questions, everybody? Yes, darling. Talk to me. 2 of you. Good. Okay. In the back of the minute. Go, you 3.
Thank you very much.
We have a microphone, please, for the speakers.
Oh,
Do we have a microphone?
yes, I know.
Good. Please bring it. So we can all hear you, darling. It helps.
Very,
Actually, that thing.
Yeah.
Just move that thing.
Oh, it's okay, but it's bring it over. Okay.
Not that.
Oh no, you could have had this one. We'll bring that one. I'm not using it. Look, I didn't realize I was supposed to use it, but never mind.
no, it's fine. I think we can hear you then.
Okay, go on, bring it over. Go on.
Oh,
Talk to me,
now-
darling.
Can you hear me? I don't
Not very. Go closer.
Closer?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
it.
closer.
Wonderful.
Okay, all right, my question now is, all right, so I obviously don't want to create bad karma for myself.
That's right. Good.
Nevertheless, I do it.
Of course we do. Join the club.
Okay.
Habits are strong.
So what is the best thing to do once you realize that you
Yep.
transgressed?
Yep.
I mean, is it doing prayers over and over?
No, not at all. I mean, yes, it helps. That kind of nourishes it. But the actual, and this is really where we get into what is practice. So let's just start now. Take the mic. That's good enough. So the man behind will do you later. Okay, sweetheart? What's your name at the back?
I'm John.
John, I'll ask your question later. Hang on a check. Let's do this one. Who are you, darling?
Pamela.
Pamela. Thank you, Pamela. Okay. So a good point. We keep doing it because why? Because the habits are so primordial. And that's why if you take the view of karma, you don't start as a blank slate at the time of you're born. You come packaged, programmed with all your past, good and bad. And that informs us, obviously, you know. So if you can see you've got a very strong habit to lie, and some people really do have it, it's almost impossible to stop lying. The habit is so strong. Or like imagine a habit like torturing. One of my friends on death row, Mitchell, who's a Buddhist, and I know a guy who's come when I used to go to do classes there years ago. He comes to the class. He's a very laid back guy, looks like very relaxed. But Mitchell said, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. Can you imagine coming into this life with a tendency to torture? And if you take the view of karma, it explains why little children want to harm the ants, or some little children don't want to harm the ants. It's not just good luck and bad luck. They brought their tendencies with them. So we can see that strong tendencies. I mean, unbelievable. I remember reading an interview. Remember that years and years and years ago, that fellow called Jeffrey Dahmer? I remember reading about him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading interviews with him. He seemed like a very nice guy with good qualities, but he had this unfortunate tendency to want to torture people. Now, he didn't know why he did it. His mother didn't teach him. Do you understand my point? Our mother didn't teach us to be angry. My mother did not need to teach me to be angry. I knew how to be angry. I had it down, you know? So when we take the view of karma, that you come into this life programmed, then of course, immediately you can see this child, this little Jeffrey Dahmer, he didn't know why, but he got pleasure. We'll go into this later, from harming beings. He didn't know why, so he kept it secret, of course. And of course, then he graduated to humans and eating their brains and all those things. You know, he had no idea why he was doing this. Well, my poor guy friend on death row doesn't know either why he thinks of torture all the time. So our worst thing is eat too much food, maybe badmouth the husband, you know. So then, given that we've got these tendencies, we're very honest with ourselves. Then at the very first level, and we often miss this in our culture, we love the idea of meditating, but the mind comes in the middle scope. The mind comes later. We've got to first control the servants of the mind, which is a good way of putting it, which means your body and your speech. So that's where, in the very first level, the instructions try not to kill, steal, lie. We mightn't do those, but we do other things. So we make decisions. We have a practice. But the very powerful level of helping us do these things is to live in vows. Okay, Pamela. And we'll go into that later. We'll go into that. But you've got to start with a practice, and even just every day you make decisions. You know. Okay, I know my habits. So you do the end of it. So two ways in the first level of practice, two main techniques. One is to live in vows and to have a daily practice. And the other one is at the end of the day to do purification. These are the two main techniques that help radically shift the tendencies. And we'll go into more detail later. But they're the two things. Are you familiar with that, right?
Yes.
So they're the main things. We really apply those laws. The vows are tremendous. I'll go into that later, not yet. But you make decisions, you check up. So in general, you want to, even though you don't steal, kill, lie, you still make decisions every day because the habits are there from the past, and you want to put atomic bombs under them, and that's what purification does. So that we'll go into these details later. So it's practical, you know, you apply these practical skills, knowing you can't change overnight, but you do what you can to do the weeding, you understand, and slowly adding other practices to it, like doing positive things and doing other prayers and practices and mantras, which help kind of nourish those practices. It's very practical, you know. We'll go into more details. That's the principle. You understand, Pamela? We'll go into details. So, John, what's your question, darling?
Oh, just a question.
Go, please, sweetheart.
I think that speaker at the front can hear him without that.
Yes, hear people without it.
The internet.
But maybe I can't, though. I'm deaf. Go on.
No, how is the internet?
How is Venerable Tendra?
What, sweetheart?
How is Venerable Tendra?
What's the word?
Venerable Tendra.
I have no idea. I haven't seen her for years.
She's
Where is she? Ask them. I don't know. I haven't heard from her for years. Where is she?
here. She just had surgery.
So please tell John all about. You know her, obviously.
She's doing very well. She's recovering.
Talk to John. Tell John. Let me answer. Tell John. How did you meet her? Where did you meet her?
Here.
Oh, good. So you have been here before. You said you hadn't.
Well, I hadn't met you before.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I said that's true. I asked you, have we met before? You're right, John. I'm sorry. I'm not Venerable Tundran. I'm sorry. She speaks more gently than me. Maybe it's a bit shocking to have a loud Australian nun, is it?
No, everyone's different.
He's so patient. Good. So I'm glad to know she's better then. So she is here. I must get a chance to say hello to her then.
I've been thinking about her all week.
What, sweetheart?
I've been thinking about her all week.
He's been thinking about what?
He's been thinking
All
about
week.
Venerable
Well, good. You
Tendra
should
all
pass
week.
on a message. You should pass on John's message to her.
I will.
He's been
today.
thinking about it all week. It's very good, John. Well done. Good. Okay. Thank you, sweetheart. What else, people? Questions? Yes.
What's your perspective on the
thought that if you focus on the cause of the suffering, you can learn the lesson from the suffering.
Yes.
So that you don't have to repeat the suffering over and over.
This is, I
There'll
think,
be other sufferings that come right behind it.
I think this is a really profound point, and this is absolutely implied in this Four Noble Truths and the view of karma. So if we have the view that we don't know why bad things happen, so we get all upset and blame people, there's no learning, is that you just make everything more miserable. But if we take the view that it's a fruit of our past action and we own it, then the next step, the owning it, and the next step is, I don't want this suffering again, so I must stop causing it. It's the cigarettes and cancer one. When you know that the cause of the cancer, which you know you don't want, is you smoking cigarettes, then the first thing is, I must stop smoking cigarettes, and that's a logical first step, isn't it? And so that's expressed in the purification practice. Do you know about that one? What's your name? May I know your name? Bob. Do you know about the practice, the purification practice?
No.
We'll go into it, okay? So those 4 steps address that exactly. Very practical. Thank you, Bob. It's so intelligent, so sensible. But the trouble is that we don't know. We say, how dare that happen to me? I don't deserve it. You're not going to learn from it. You're just going to make it worse and blame everybody else, which is what the world does, you know? This one of karma is very powerful. It makes us take not guilt and shame, but responsibility. You know, we learn from, we pick ourselves up, and of course we don't do it again because we don't want the future result. It's so practical. What else, people? Someone else?
Hello.
No. Yes. Yes, my dear.
Chris.
Chris. Hi, Chris.
Very nice to meet you.
Yes.
Someone that I know, kind of in a casual sense, was arrested about a week ago.
Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry.
And as far as I know, there's a mountain of evidence against this person.
Yeah.
The charge is possessing child pornography.
Oh God, they're in serious trouble.
It is my thinking that someone who has done something like this was assaulted at a younger age, which in turn, the person who did the assaulting in the past probably was also assaulted. I see it as a
That's your view,
chain
yeah.
that
Okay,
back.
so then go on. Then
So I'm hoping as the afternoon goes on,
yeah,
to get words of wisdom from you.
Okay.
But also I believe that I can get words of wisdom from many, many of my classmates. So I know of this person. I'm an Orange County, Florida Democrat.
Yes.
He was part of the Orange County Democratic Executive Committee. He was forced off the committee when he was arrested.
Wow, I'm sure. Yes, it's very sad.
As a Buddhist, I wish to reach out to this person.
Of course.
Last I heard, he was in the Seminole County Jail.
Yes.
So that's in Sanford. I live in Orlando.
I understand. So anyway, the question is, you want to know the Buddhist analysis of it?
Yes.
Yes. Good. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
And from my class.
No, I don't want to hear this is my gig, and I don't want everybody else's view. I mean, that's not being.
I've heard that you are the boss.
I know. So hear my point here. It's not being rude. I love hearing people's views, but it's sort of like if it's a mathematics class, you wouldn't ask everybody else what their views about mathematics is. You invited a person to come along who's meant to be an expert, even though I'm a small expert. So that'll do. Then you can discuss it yourselves. Do you understand my point here? In your discussion at lunchtime, that's when you do your discussing. That's when you learn each other's views. That's for sure. But let me give you the Buddhist analysis. Okay, shall I do that?
Excellent.
Good. Okay. Well, I think the materialist view, the view that is predominant in our culture, and I'm never criticizing, it's just a way of labeling the view, which is a materialist view, which is you have a brain and you come from your mother and there's no consciousness, there's no soul. You see what I'm saying? That's coming from the past. There's no concept of karma. Then the only way we can understand why a person gets angry is either because usually someone's angry with them. It's the first thing. We always look to what the parents did, what mummy did, what daddy did to them. That's our analysis, isn't it? Do you agree? So, but the Buddhist view is not, we don't not do that, but the more powerful view in Buddhism is why anyone does anything, why any tendency arises in your mind, whether it's to play tennis, jump on little girls, watch porn, lie, steal, or be generous, whether it's positive, negative, artistic, intellectual. Do you get my point here? Not even just moralistic. Any tendency that arises in a person's mind is because you've done it before. That's the simplest reason. So it doesn't follow that he's been abused in the past. So many, I mean, that's why I know, for example, I always remember the Columbine kids.
Right.
I remember, of course, it was so shocking, their video that showed them to be these wacko kids with their weird views, that in this multi-murder they did. So the first view we have I remember talking to a person who'd been in the county working in the government as a result. And the first thing we do is, what did their parents do to them? So there was this big analysis of their mummy and daddy, and all people could find was two nice white Christian parents. There's no evidence of anything, and no one believes it. People think, no, they're lying, they're stealing, they're lying, you know. But it doesn't have to be. These two kids brought their own junk with them. Hitler brought his tendencies with him. To try and think that you'd blame this little old Austrian housewife for Hitler's maniac tendencies is a bit far-fetched. But it's the best we can do if we have a materialist view. Do you see my point? It doesn't mean you weren't abused in the past. But I mean, you know, we can see many people. I've had a few problems with my father in the past. I have never had a tendency to abuse anybody sexually. I might punch them in the nose or shout at them. I mean, I don't punch people in the nose, but shout. But never, never. So that doesn't always follow. So I'm just saying that. So it's because the tendency is there. And see, that's the basis. That's why the Jeffrey Dahmer story, of when he's a little boy, he was compelled to torture people. It's hard for us to hear this because we prefer to think that children are innocent. It makes us very depressed to think that children, you know, that a person comes into this life with tendencies. But that's the Buddhist view. It doesn't come from the parents. It comes from the past. In other words, you know, so then that's the general Buddhist approach. And of course, then that's why compassion, when you can see your tendencies, maybe you don't want to jump on little girls or watch porn, but you might get angry, you might, you know, do you see my point? Then you have compassion for yourself, like, you know, Bob's point. You begin to have compassion. Look at my ridiculous tendencies. I don't want to do these again. Then you can only have compassion. Okay, the poor man, he got caught. Whatever. Unfortunately, that's the problem we think is the problem. If he didn't get caught, he wouldn't have minded. But getting caught's the problem, isn't it? You know, and now he's going to be in trouble because people do not like sexual abusers, especially porn watchers. Unfortunate. It's so sad. But that's the fundamental Buddhist explanation. So any tendencies in our mind, good or bad, intellectual, emotional, moral, are all because we came programmed with them from the first second. And that's a big different view, you've got to admit. But that's the Buddhist one.
And
do you see my point?
That view makes so much sense.
Huh?
That view.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Exactly. So then you can have compassion for the poor man. I mean, he's also got good qualities, but the trouble is in the world, when we hear about this, we paint the whole of him with that one bad brush, don't we? And that's the sad part. I know when I go to the prisons, I still go to some prisons. I don't run the prison project anymore, but I go in Sydney, I go to always see the sex offenders. There's a group there in one of the prisons. And I mean, I'm happy to talk to sex offenders. You know, I don't mind. I mean, my father abused me. I'm not trying to go on about it, but I love my father, forgive my father. It's okay. So I always have compassion for these guys because the trouble is they're the worst in the world. The sex offenders, I think, are the lowest on the totem pole, you know.
Right. You
can even burgle and lie, but you don't care. But if you're a sex offender, people don't like you. These guys, so what happens is we define ourselves in terms of those actions. I'm a sex offender. The world says you're a sex offender. So for me, this is a really important point in Buddhism. We've all got negative tendencies, but we tend to define ourselves in those. I'm a bad person. I'm an angry person. I'm a depressed person. This is a big problem. We've got other qualities, and the Buddhist view is that they're not set in stone. We're not defined. To define ourselves in terms of our good qualities and our potential is a really important point. So I try to encourage, and it's very moving for them to hear, you know, that they're not defined by their bad. And all of us need to hear that. It's so important. Then we can have compassion. You understand?
Thank you.
Someone else. What's the schedule? What time is lunch? 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock for lunch. Yes.
Okay, good. So any other questions, people? So I keep going, shall I? Shall I keep going?
Well, a simple question.
Yeah, please.
Rather serious.
Yeah.
What is the role of humor in Buddhism?
Humor? Well, people tell me I'm funny. Am I funny? Well, I think if I weren't funny, we'd all be crying. I think it's not funny, it'd be fundamentalist, pointing fingers, anger. I think that. Do you agree with me?
Yeah,
I think so. I think you got to be humorous, otherwise it's too heavy. It's too concrete, you know. That's when the worst thing with religious philosophy, we can get very fundamentalist. You're bad, you're evil. There's no joy there, you know, isn't it? Not to mention humor. There's this, I know it's very funny, but there's this English comedian, maybe you old people might know. His name is the Two Ronnies. You ever watch the Two Ronnies? Well, Ronnie Corbett is a little guy. He's short, with glasses, and he's all kind of perky. When I lived in London in the 80s, The number of people who thought I was Ronnie Corbett. Even a taxi driver from 100 meters away. My God, I thought you were Ronnie Corbett. I went to one conference one time where it was about death, and there was these actors role playing how you work with deaf people. And as soon as I stood up, I said, "Oh my gosh, you're just like Ronnie Corbett." It's very funny. Apparently I'm funny, like Ronnie Corbett. What you do? Anyway, that's a good point though. And Lama Yeshe, all these lamas, you see it. I mean, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa like are famous. When you do retreat, like in Tushita Dharamsala, our house there, and we'd be in the Gompa, we're doing our retreat all serious, and you hear these gales of laughter, and Jackie would know because she lived with them. There's gales of laughter. They'd be laughing hysterically, all the time, all the time. What questions, folks? Any more, or shall I keep on going? So let's look more. So the main point I want to get here is the relationship between this understanding of your own suffering to why you have compassion for others. That's the key thing I want to see here. When we can realize that we create our own suffering, then when you see the pedophiles and the murderers, you're going to have compassion. But this is the difference in the compassion. The compassion we have now is a bit sentimental, a bit wishy-washy. The poor victim, they can't help it. And you don't put that onto the murderer. Oh, the poor thing can't help it. No, this compassion is more grounded and more powerful because it realizes that we set ourselves up for suffering, and that's kind of tragic. So, but you've got to know this for yourself first. This is the fundamental point, Until we understand the Four Noble Truths for ourselves, we will never be able to have much compassion for anybody else except the innocent victims, Because the whole world, this is the point. Like I said to you, the Bodhisattvas have such compassion for us. For this reason alone, that we don't realize that we create our own suffering and we can create our own happiness, which is so it's powerful, So let's look then at back to Pamela's point. What are the actual practices to put into practice this idea that we create our own suffering from the very first level, entry level, junior school, grade 1? So then is the two most powerful ways to put into practice: don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't this, don't that, which is Buddha's general instructions. But if you decide, you want to decide you like this path and you commit to this path, and you would formalize your commitment to the path by taking refuge, as they say, in front of somebody. And then at the same time, you would take the 5 lay person's vows. So these are the very first formal steps that one would take. And there's tremendous power psychologically in this, and I want to discuss it. And then the second practice to incorporate into your day at the end of the day is called is purification practice. So in general, if we take the general view of karma, that Buddha uses all the time the analogy of sowing seeds. So the long-term goal is we're trying to pull out the bad seeds, we're trying to pull out the weeds even before they grow, and we're trying to grow the flowers. Well, mainly in this first stages of practice, the wisdom wing, we're focusing on pulling out the weeds. We're focusing on putting atomic bombs under the negative tendencies, which is a pretty powerful practice itself, And that's accomplished by living in vows and then supported by, at the end of the day, doing the purification practice, which we know as the four powers. It's got 4 steps, As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, we are insane not to do that practice every day. So let's look at the power of vows, the first one, and the power of purification, the second one. This is junior school, just junior school. This is not even the middle school. We're not even talking about meditation yet. We're not even talking about the mind yet. We're talking about the behavior. So, because karma is all first about behavior. The actions we do with our body and speech are driven by delusions are 1,000,000 times more powerful than actions merely done by the thoughts, They're the ones that then ripen as future external suffering, not just the mind. So first is behavior. First is controlling the servants of the mind, the body and the speech. Okay, so when a person is feeling like they've thought about Buddhism, they like the idea of Buddha, they're comfortable with no concept of creator. I make that point because that's the radical difference in Buddhism as opposed to the Christian or the Muslim teachings, no creator. We are the one who creates. But nevertheless, we want to rely upon the Buddha. There's no contradiction there. You can still have faith in the Buddha, confidence in the Buddha's teachings based on wisdom, not just based on blind belief. You take it as your working hypothesis. You're prepared to, You've looked into the Buddha. So the first thing is you looked into the Buddha, you've read some of the teachings, you like what he says. Then you decide you're going to rely upon the Buddha and the Dharma and his spiritual community, the three jewels, as they call it, you know. So when you're ready to do that, you then request one of your people you like. You need to choose a person that you feel comfortable with. Like, you know, for example, John, let's say, decides one day he wants to be a Buddhist. He might, request Venerable Children to give him refuge. General, not children. Tendron, sorry, Tendron. Children, Tendron, same. The last word is the same. So you've got to feel, it's helpful to, think of the teachers you know that you feel comfortable with, that you like, you'd request them. You make a relationship with that person. It's important to take that seriously, you know. So anyway, so what's refuge and the lay vows? What's the first step? Well, I think here when we try to understand the power of the mind, then these two make sense. The vows especially. So the refuge one is you'd request that person, and the refuge ceremony is quite short. You'd basically sit in front of that person, you kneel in front, and you repeat a certain thing. I will take refuge now until the day on blah 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 blah. You commit to that in front of somebody. And so basically you're sort of like doing a bit of a contract with the person, you know, who represents Buddha for you. You shake hands and you agree. You'll do your part of the job, and they'll do their part of the job, which is to help you on your path. You commit to that person as being one of your spiritual teachers, you know. The second one is the vow that comes second. And this is really very potent, actually. I think this gets us to really see the power of the mind, which means the power of thoughts. So the Lord Buddha says we've got thoughts every millisecond. It's pretty obvious. And that every one of those thoughts programs the mind. So I think he would have liked that concept. Or, as he would say, sows seeds in the mind. Every thought counts. It's a pretty powerful view. In our culture, we think thinking doesn't matter. I can think what I like, we say. As long as no one knows it, we can keep it secret, you know. Okay. A bit demented. The Buddha said thoughts, the mind is the main thing. So every thought counts. Every thought sows seed. So given that, then if you decide you're going to take a vow, which is to do with behavior, not the mind, then the vows, there's a little list of 10, like I said before. The first 7, the first 3 are the body. This is general instructions, not vows. They're like general advice from the Buddha. First 3 are about the body. The next 4 are the speech. But the third ones, the last 3 to make it up to 10, I put it this way, they're sort of the beginnings of working on your mind, the kind of the heavy duty levels of it, 3 poisons: attachment, anger, and ignorance. And we'll go into these later. That's high school, actually. We'll go into that later. So the vows here are all about behavior. Vows aren't about the mind. They're about behavior, body and speech. And why? Because we can see in the world that what does the harm is the body and the speech. The mind is the source, of course. The fist goes out because there's anger there. The fist will not go out if there's no anger driving it. Just we don't notice. You don't steal something with your hand if the mind isn't thinking it. The hand hasn't got its own brain, you know. The body and speech is kind of powerful. At least you begin to harness them first. And if we all did that in this world, the world would be a happy place. There's no question. But look at this, completely berserk behavior, berserk body and speech. We don't even think about it. So vows are powerful because this is the logic of it, okay? So karma, it's a general word. I don't even know what it means. I think it means action or something. But it's shorthand to refer to this natural law called cause and effect, such that everything we think and do and say programs the mind, sows seeds in the mind that will naturally ripen in the future as rebirth, tendencies, experiences, and environment, entire life, okay? So, okay, behavior. The vow, what's a vow then? So if everything we think and do and say counts, then what we need in our mind stream is bucket loads of very delicious, rich, intentional, positive karmic seeds, just to get another decent human rebirth at the time of death. That's why it's so important to understand the death process. We might get a chance to talk about it. At the time of death, Rinpoche talks about it in his book, How to Face Death Without Fear. It's very clear that at the time of death, we can deduce in our past life, not more than a few weeks before this life now, not more than a few weeks before our mind found its way to our mother's fallopian tube, very precisely. At the time of our past death, not more than a few weeks before that, we could have been a dog, an ant, or a human, either way. coming with all our billions of karmic imprints from past lives, as we go through the death process, say we were a dog or a human, doesn't matter, we can deduce that we must have been relatively peaceful, because at the time, as we start to stop breathing, one of the karmic seed that would be the cause of this present human body was already triggered. It was our past karma. Your mother gives it to you, but you create the cause to go get it, you know? And what's the cause of that? Strong habit of non-killing specifically. Why that? Because it's the most intense of the negative actions is to kill. So that to refrain from killing is the most intense positive action. But the point is this: in order to have a rich, delicious, non-killing karmic seed dropped into our bank vault, there've got to be 4 things in place when we did it. 1, there has to be a sentient being there, the mouse in your kitchen, an object of the action. 2, your mind involved in it. There's 2 parts. 2, I'm jumping away from death now. I'm looking at the past actions we must have done in order to have that accessible to us at the time of death. So when you did that action, it would have been 1, there's a mouse in the kitchen. 2, your mind involved. 2A is intention, bare bones, not motivation, but I will not kill that mouse. I must be careful to not kill that mouse. Bare bones intention, volition. Then 2B is the motivation, compassion. They come together pretty tight, but they're 2 separate components in the mind. So 1 is there's got to be a mouse there, or an ex-husband, whoever it might be. You understand? 2, I must not kill him. Why not? Compassion. The poor guy doesn't want to suffer. 3, you do the action of refraining from killing. Conscious, intentional. 4, result, a happy live husband. Thank you, Robina, goodbye. That's a complete action of non-killing. Now, that's proactive, and it's very intentional and proactive. Now, today, at this minute, sitting in these chairs now, we are not killing anybody, are we? But we're not thinking it. There's no object in front of us we want to kill. There's no intention. There's no motivation. There's no action, and there's no result. So we're not creating any karma of non-killing. Just being a nice person, as Lama says, is not enough. Are you hearing the difference? Can you hear that? Can you really hear that, people? They're being nice people now. We're not creating the virtue of non-killing. And just to get a decent human body, which means also not just that, but to have intentions, have good virtuous intentions, virtuous motive, virtuous experiences, and virtuous results, all the three results, I'll go into them. You need strong, delicious, intentional, virtuous karma. Now, how many times a day will that happen? It won't. So, but if you have vows, that's amazing. Lama Zopa says, as Buddha's teaching, because of the power of vows, we're going to go into why, 24 hours a day that you're keeping a vow to not kill without even thinking about it, when you're in bed with your best new boyfriend, when you're in the pub getting drunk, okay, you're creating negative karma of getting drunk, but you're kicking over the virtuous karma of non-killing if you've got a vow in your mind stream 24 hours a day. So we can't get ahead without vows. And I think this is logical. I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain why. Lord, but it's all Buddha's teaching, but Lama Zopa never stopped teaching this, really precisely, really articulate about it. And I love these things, you know. So for me, it's so helpful. Okay, what is it about a vow that's powerful psychologically? Well, I think it's obvious. We all know in general. Okay, what is a vow? A vow is a decision, intentional decision to refrain from something. A commitment is an intentional decision to do something. So this main energy in this first stage of practice is to refrain from doing the negativity. By the time you've harnessed your body, speech, and mind in junior school and high school, the wisdom wing, you're now ready on the compassion wing to proactively do good, intentionally do good things. That's advanced. There's a morality of refraining from harming, and then there's a morality of doing good. That doesn't come until the bloody bodhisattva path. Excuse me, I just got a bit Australian now, I got carried away. Are we communicating? So, as Buddha says, they say in the Prasangika and some of the teachings, Alex Berzin quotes, that vows are like this subtle physical energy visible to clairvoyance. It's so potent. So why? We know you can say, oh, I must go on a diet. You can say that. For 27 years, you know you will never go on a diet until you say, I will go on a diet. Have you noticed I'm thinner? Did you notice? I checked up on the Buddhas. I'm not sound silly, but a few months ago I decided I'm going to ask the Buddhas, I do my way of checking, is it beneficial to lose weight? And it came out 100% yes. I was very surprised, so I had to do it. So I went on a special diet called eating less. I'm sorry, it does work. Anorexics know how to eat less. So if they can do it, so can we. We all say, even Oprah, now she's discovered Ozempic. Oh, it's all our brain. We can't help it. Don't be ridiculous. I mean, it's hard. So I had to go on a strict diet and I lost 20 pounds. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Still fat around here. The belly takes time to go. I have to notice. The belly really doesn't change. But I think a bit sort of the external bit's a bit thinner, you know. The feet, even my feet slightly thinner, you know. Anyway. But I've got very slow metabolism. I have to eat 500 calories a day to get healthy. I don't need more, you know. I'm fortunate. I like food. Never mind anyway. So we all know you won't do it until you intend. It's really obvious, isn't it? So then what a vow is, it's kind of clear. Once I've decided I will eat less, then every day it's next to you telling you what to do. Are we communicating here? I'll repeat because you just lost it.
we still got it.
Okay, we'll wait till they're on again.
There we go.
Are we all here? So we can see as soon as your mind is involved in it, it's a billion times more powerful. So even though I didn't technically take a vow, I did to myself, it's obvious that the power of that vow is what protected me from eating too much, isn't it? If I didn't remember it, then shows the power of the thoughts, the mind. And a vow is a putting into your mind a strong decision. You take fight. I will never kill. I will never lie. I will never steal. I will never jump on the wrong partner, and I will never take an intoxicant. You can take any or all. So then you do that, and not only that, but there's a set of vows. This is Buddha's trip. And what happens is I've been given permission by Lama Zopa, right, to do it, to give people. So I do it. So where did I get it from? My Lama. Where did they get it from? And you can track this back into an unbroken chain of this power source right back to the Buddha. So you act like you're getting it right from the Buddha. It's really delicious. You know, I find I like it very much, this concept, the vows. And so that you say it in front of that person. You vow I will do that. And then as Lama Zopa was saying, 24 hours a day, you're keeping those vows without intention, without motivation. It's pure. It's programming your mind in that tendency 24 hours a day, dropping rich, delicious karmic seeds in your mind 24 hours a day, and putting atomic bombs under the tendency from billions of lifetimes. So you can't, as Amazobi says, you cannot get ahead without this, psychologically, without these vows. It makes sense to me. It makes complete sense, you know. It's the power of vows. And you are the beneficiary. You're not doing it to please Buddha. You're not doing it to please your mother. You are the beneficiary. It's profound. It's amazing, you know. Then that's during the day. Then at night, you do the four opponent powers. We're insane not to do it every day. So based on your vows, at the end of the day, you do your little 4 steps, you know. First one, the 4 R's. The first one is regret. This is really important to understand. We hear it as guilt, you know. His Holiness one time was asked, what's the difference between guilt and this wholesome kind of regret? And he said, guilt, you look in the past and you say, I did this and I did that, and, you know, and then you conclude, and I'm a bad person. And that's just called anger, you know. I did this and I did that and I'm a bad person. That's just saying you did this and you did that and you're a bad person. It's anger, but you're the object. And we run to that like a magnet, and it is totally useless. It's a disaster. So what's regret? Well, His Holiness says, the first part's the same. I did do this, and I did do that, and I did do this. So then he says, what he says, and then you think, well, what can I, like your point, Bob, what can I do to change? It's intelligent. You know? So what that process of regret then is, you acknowledge, not kick and scream and shout and blame everybody else. I did kill, I did lie, I did hit the dog, I did cheat on my wife, I did steal. You own it. You did do it. Why? Because of stupid ignorance, because of habit. You don't want the future suffering. So you think, I regret it, and you speak to yourself. These 4 steps, I think of it as like a practice where you're becoming your own friend. I don't read the words when I do this. I don't use my bell and dorji and say Sanskrit. I do it my own inner process. It's so powerful. You know, the first step is you're talking to yourself. I regret having done that. You know, why, Robina? Because you know what, sweetie pie? I don't want future suffering. That's fact. You speak to yourself. So of course I regret having done it. So a lot of people say, but I couldn't have done any better at the time. So I always use the example of when I had an abortion when I was 23, right? And now, of course, I think of that as killing a human being. And why is I always tell this story too, but it embarrasses some people. But never mind, I'm going to say it anyway. Many women have this experience. I was a hippie, right? Back in the 60s. I was a good hippie. I was kind to boys, like good hippies. I remember this particular boy. I didn't like him that much, but he was a nice boy, and I was a good hippie. You understand? I was 23 in London, hippie. So this boy, and I remember at the time, exactly at the time, I thought, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I didn't know the words then, but I knew something had come inside me, right? His consciousness. I didn't know those words. But the second I said, oh my God, I'm pregnant, my next thought, I'll have an abortion. Next thought, well, I'm lying with him. I didn't like him that much, so it didn't matter, you know. I wasn't so aware of anything else, you know. It wasn't so much fun there. Next thought was, I have an abortion. So what's all that about? Well, first of all, my one friend I have whose daughter and her husband were staying in the mother's house while their house was being built. And the daughter came down for breakfast one morning, said, Mummy, I'm pregnant. And the mother said, when did you know? When did you find out? She said, 40 minutes ago. You understand me? You look puzzled, Jackie. Did you hear me? Are you in pain?
No.
You're not in pain? You're what? Cold? Give the girl a blanket.
I've got.
Give her a blanket.
I'm just relating your experience to my own.
Your own experience. There you go. This is very common. I don't know if men have that experience. When you're with the woman in bed, you know you got pregnant. Have any men had that experience? You have. Isn't that interesting? You knew at the time.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So see, that's the proof, because the Buddhist view is that's when the consciousness goes there. That's the point. This is the point. So here's back. So my abortion is a good example. There's this person. I always think of it as a her. Oh, to finish the story, I got the abortion because England had just approved abortions to be part of the national health. So I thought, oh, aren't I lucky, you know? So I went to the hospital. I explained the reason. Doctor said, go to abortion. They checked me in. I had an abortion, right? I didn't pay a penny. It was all free. But I remember, this is the point. This person, I was thinking of as female, she had died in the past. A few weeks before she had died. She'd been in this body, and then at the time of her death, one of her virtuous karmic seeds, not practiced in the context of killing, not killing, that's the point, just a virtuous karmic seed of non-killing was triggered before she even stopped breathing, that programmed her already to go to my womb. That was already set up. This is very powerful. Already the karma was set up. Second, the other three ways that karma ripens are already coming into place. That means the second way that her karma ripened, and there was no evidence of that because she didn't get born, is all her mental tendencies. We don't know about those because she never got the chance to get born, right? Three, this is the third one, that's called experiences similar to the cause, and that's this one for her. She had the type of rebirth called human from non-killing, but three, the third one, she had the experience to be killed by me because I must have killed her. Are you with me? Can you see that? So that karma was there. She doesn't know. Of course, she gets my womb. I jump into bed with this boy. She comes running after she's died. She's in the intermediate state, kind of twiddling her thumbs, waiting for me and the boy to go together. That's the karma she had. That's history we created with each other. We hop into bed. Egg and sperm come together, and she runs like a magnet and jumps in. And that second, oh my God, I'm pregnant, I said. Then next thought, I'll have an abortion. So why that thought? That's why I see many women have incredible guilt about abortions. But you've got to realize this is dependent arising. There's no way in the universe I could have had the thought I'll have an abortion if we didn't have the karma between us from her having killed me in the past. Not possible. Absolutely not possible. Got to realize it's dependent arising, you know. We're in this scenario together. It's a tragedy. So this person, one, created the main karma to get a human body, but two, the third one, experienced similar to the cause of another action of past killing that then was triggered the second she hit my womb. And then 12 weeks later, she was aborted. You know, I got the nurses to do it, the doctors to do it, and the poor woman, the poor little baby, had to be taken out again because they mangled her poor little fetus. They had to straighten me out again, you know. A heavy duty suffering. That's her karma. I was part of the deal.
The boy too.
Huh?
The boy that was next to you.
Yeah, he knew nothing about it. He knew, I mean, it was due to karma too, but he knew nothing about it. I never told him. I never met him again, I don't think. Yeah, some karma with him there, clearly. But the main one of mine, because I was the one who decided. He didn't decide anything. He knew nothing about it. I didn't tell him. There's no reason. Are we communicating here? So it's very dynamic, you know? That's why with regret, You don't just go, oh, I'm a bad person. I killed the baby. I'm so evil. Poor innocent baby. No, it's karmic connection. But it's not. But when we think, oh, she's not innocent, then we think, oh, well, she deserves it. You never have that thought if you have karma. You have compassion. There's all these little lemmings right, acting out our karma, without any awareness, following our instinct like babies, So tragic. So I always regret that one. And that what it means is, at that time, there's no way I could have made any other decision. The conditions were so strong. You see my point now? And I didn't think I was killing anybody. I didn't think of it like that. But due to my ignorance at that time and the strength of the karma, in a sense, there was no choice. But I can learn from it because what I did was sow a seed in my mind that all those until I became a Buddhist and took vows, that was multiplying. The karma of killing was multiplying, multiplying, multiplying in my mind. So when I became a Buddhist and I made a vow not to kill, I'm putting atomic bombs under it. You understand? So then I always remember it, and I do regret because Robina, I don't want that kind of suffering for myself. It's not compassion for her yet. Regret is compassion for yourself. No compassion yet. That's the first and second scopes. It's not about compassion for others. We mix all that up and get confused, It's compassion for yourself is the way to put it. I don't want future suffering. I am sick of suffering. Of course I regret it. And that strengthens you to go further and go to the next step. And as Dalai Lama says, what shall I do about it? Well, whom can I turn to? Next step. Well, find a doctor. Give me the medicine that I will take. And this is where the Buddha comes in. And this is a massive difference, again, be precise, between the Christian view and the Buddhist view. If you're a Christian, you do regret killing because you went against God's will. Then you must beg God to forgive you. This is the point. I'm not criticizing. You turn to God and you say, please, God, forgive me. And you know why? Because forgiveness is what purifies you. Forgiveness is what purifies you. Well, Buddha's a nice guy. He would forgive you, but that's not what purifies you. You've got to see the difference. It's like you're going to your doctor. Oh, please forgive me for smoking, doctor. Can you stop me getting cancer? Well, of course you can't. She would forgive you, but you've got to do the work. That's the difference. Can you hear that point? It's a radical difference, So you do rely upon the Buddha. He's a good doctor. He's giving you the method. Wow, amazing. So the second step is two parts. Rely as you visualize. We do the practice in relation to Tantra. We do visualize Vajrasattva. So if the Buddha, so then I don't do a formal prayer there. I just go, wow, I'm so happy I found a decent doctor called the Buddha. I'm so delighted to have the Buddha, He's given me these methods. You rejoice you've got a decent doctor. That's refuge. That's my refuge anyway. Not Sangye Chodam Toke Chodam La. Don't understand me? I'm being a bit berserk today. I'm sorry. So the second part is now compassion for the others. Now I have compassion for the baby because of their karma, putting themselves in that situation and suffering of being mangled in my womb and dying again, So you have compassion first for yourself because you don't want the future suffering, whatever the actions are, sincerely. And you can do it in your own words, very simple and short. Then second, you turn to the Buddha, be delighted, put him above your head. And then second, compassion for others. The ones you've done, you regret for their sake. And if you can, now in this step, you have compassion for those who've harmed you. Why? Because they will suffer in the future. Third step, you take the remedy. In this context, you visualize Buddha or nectar coming, and you recite the mantra. To be very powerful because the mantra, the Sanskrit syllables are so powerful, visualization. And this is where Lama Zopa says here that the confidence, he says faith, but he means confidence that by this very practice of you imagining purifying, wanting to purify, seeing the nectar coming, purifying your mind, saying the mantra, that is what purifies. The power of your own mind. And even though you're visualizing Buddha, it is not Buddha purifying you. It's you visualizing Buddha purifying you. You're using that visualization of Buddha purifying you. You do the work. So the fourth step is you vow to change. We'll discuss that. But as Lama Yeshe says, what purification is the power of the regret. Yours, the power of your reliance and compassion, the power of the remedy you visualizing, and the power of your determination to change. He also says we create negativity with our mind, so we purify it naturally by creating positivity with our mind. You rely upon the Buddha. We do the work. Very tasty. Because there's no negative karma we can't change. There's no tendency that's set in stone. There's none of these that define us. Buddha has found from his own experience that the negative neurotic states of mind are not integral to us. They're not at the core of our being. That's his radical finding. That's his radical finding. They're not intrinsic to us. Therefore, they can be removed. And there's 4 steps. Psychological. This is what purification is. So living in vows and doing this every day, honey child, you can have your feet up all day eating popcorn, watching Netflix. Now, I'm not being sarcastic. You can watch your breath for 7 hours a day and you're still drowned because every once feet you go up, 17 feet you go down. These are the practices that are so powerful. Are we communicating, Pam? Good. It's all your mind. Don't call it religion. Time for lunch. Have some questions now. We have lunch. Any questions?
I have,
Yes, go, Bob.
you mentioned, you said, I set myself up for suffering, I create my own suffering. What's the distinction between create and set up? Like, between I set myself up.
I know, either way, it's just being casual with words. We caused it.
Okay.
By doing that thought and doing that action, I dropped a seed, and if you drop a weed seed in the ground, you cause the weed. Create's an interesting word, so cause to be better, more logical. Do you understand? That's the way to think it. Yeah, good. What else, people? Yes, John.
Let's say like
Can we have a mic for John, please? I can't hear him, so it's just because I'm half deaf. That's why. Well, 75% deaf in the right ear. Yes, darling.
like let's say like someone you love dearly does something to you
Yes.
out of love,
Yes.
but you see it as
Harm.
harm.
Yes.
You feel
Yes.
like you just hate this thing that happened to
That's
you.
right.
You still love that person.
That's right.
Like what are your thoughts on that? What
So can you be more specific so I understand you? But you don't want to be more specific?
I don't want to be.
Okay, so maybe, I can just, let's say, use an example as a child. Let's say you're a naughty boy and mummy says, no more chocolate. I've told you 7 times. You go to your room. That's called tough love. If she's coming from the right place, she's consciously looked like what she's doing is harming you. You think, oh, I'm a naughty boy, but mummy, out of compassion, is helping you. So it could be that your best beautiful boyfriend in the whole world or your best girlfriend has decided the relationship's no longer beneficial, so they've left you. What?
Can I be a little more specific?
Okay, I'm happy to. It helps the work.
They do this thing to you like for no reason.
Well, then it's not a good motivation in their mind.
Like you're innocent, and they do this thing to you out of love, but you see it as hate.
Well, how can you? No, well, you just said that they didn't do it with a good motivation. What did you say? You just said, what was their reason for doing it to you? This action was it to help you?
Like, how does that kind of affect?
No, I have to get clear. This is not helpful. Listen to me, John. I don't need you to be so personal, but are you saying that the person did a particular action? What was their reason? What was their motivation for doing it? That's the key to the answer.
Their reason was love.
You mean they thought it? So they harmed you because they thought it was good for you.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You mean they consciously did something that you feel is harm? They did it because they want you. They feel it's best for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the same as my chocolate with a child. Can you not hear the same thing? Your mother shouts at you, looking like she's harming you, but she's out of compassion because you've been eating too much chocolate. So she says, go to your room. It's the same principle. She looks like she's being mean to you, and you feel that she's being mean, but she's in fact being compassionate to you, helping you get disciplined. So this person genuinely does love you, which means they want you to be happy. And if they genuinely think this action they did to you, which is to harm, you call it harming, is out of love, then from their side, you could argue that they create some virtuous karma. But your side, you've got to decide what to do with it. It's 2 separate things. So what have you decided what to do with it? What have you decided what to do with it? That's the key. As far as you can't stop them from doing what they do. And you can believe them or not. That's their karma. But what have you learned? What do you want to get out of this? What's your thoughts? You're still dealing with it. What do you mean?
I don't know.
So which part of you lost? So it's a good point. Let's discuss it then. Which piece are you lost at? Explain exactly what you're meaning. I don't need you to give your life away. I'm not discussing that. You're telling me someone's harmed you. I presume it's you. You're telling me they're doing an action that you feel is being harmed. It's making you sad to have this thing happen. Is that right?
Yeah.
But you're saying they've done it because they love you. You're saying that.
Yes.
So from their side, their motivation was pure, you think. Do you accept that? Or they're lying to themselves?
I do accept it.
You do accept they genuinely. I know. So then so from their side, the karma they're creating, you could say isn't so negative if they're harming you, if they really did mean well. But from your side, you have to decide how you're going to learn from this. Are you learning from this experience? Are you finding a way to understand it so you can move forward in your life? That's your job, not theirs. So what are you trying to do with it? How are you dealing with it? Is it still painful? You're sad?
I'm here.
Okay, well then I don't know why you're asking me if this is the case.
But like I'm trying to deal with it by.
Good, so you are trying to deal with it. You're trying to understand it.
Yeah.
I hear that. I hear that, sweetheart. So that's the answer. You're saying the answer. From there's two separate things. There's you dealing with your stuff, and there's this person dealing with theirs. But they're not your business now. Look, they might be lying to you. They might be speaking the truth. That's their trip. But you're learning, and you could add this person. Even if a person harms you, not out of love, it's still the same learning for you. Do you understand my point? Are you hearing the difference there? I mean, if someone steals from you because they hate you, or whether they steal from you because they love you, that's their side. But your side is the same. You've got to see what you can do with this, what you can learn from this. So the Buddha's view about karma is you must have created a cause to have this happen. So from that perspective, you own it rather than feeling like an innocent victim. It's not fair. If you can own that, then you can help yourself move forward and learn from it. That's the thing. If we're brave enough, we can learn from bad things happening in our lives. I think that's true. Do you agree with that point? Go on, keep talking. Give him the mic.
Like if we're brave enough, we can learn from.
Sorry, darling. What? What?
If we're brave enough, we can learn from the bad things that happen in life.
I think this is the key to success in life. If we don't, we'll go mad. Because we know. So I think after lunch, I'm going to go into the logic behind this mentally. We're going to look at attachment and anger and depression and what they are and the roles they play in our suffering and our happiness. That'll give the answer more deeply. So we'll do that after lunch. Okay? If you're going to come back after lunch, I'll give you the reasons. We'll talk about it. You don't have to come back, but I'm just telling you. We'll discuss that then. All right? John? Be brave, sweetheart. Keep moving. All right. Of course. Of course, yeah. Well, let's have lunch. Well, how long are we going to be? 90 minutes? 1 hour?
An hour.
An hour's enough. Yeah, perfect. 1 hour. Okay, good. Let's think about lunch differently. We haven't gone into the mind yet. But let's think about delicious lunch. Someone's made it and cooked it and grown it and picked the veggies, and little creatures have died for picking the veggies or whatever's there. So we think we're going to eat it and be happy and get fat so we can be a benefit to others. And also we can think of just blessing it with the Omahu, with the energy of the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas, and make it delicious nectar. And imagine if we could, we would offer it to all the beings of the universe and give them some joy. Lama Sangye Lama Che, Deshin Lama Gedon Te, Kungi Jepa Lama Te, Lama Namla, Chirpa Bu. Enjoy your meal. Okay, that's it. Thank you, petals. Thank you, darlings.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you, sweetheart. See you, people. See you in an hour. Bye. So what's
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, come on, Jack.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Okay, people, see you in an hour.
I can do it.
Where's my jacket? It's right there.